Okay, we're recording. Okay.
Do
All
you
right.
want to start off?
Sorry. Welcome, everyone.
Oh,
This will be our second CV workshop that we're hosting this year. Today, we're just mostly going to focus on how to shape your cover letter, specifically for the MS1s that are applying for research during the summer or the upcoming year. We'll mostly focus on how to structure it, as well as focus on writing a personal statement and show you guys some examples of before and after, and how we edited after discussing it with Danny and getting some feedback on it. So we hope you find this useful.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the cover letter workshop. We hope this workshop will really be helpful, especially as you guys apply for summer research and other opportunities. We have Dean Danny here. So thankful for him and for his advice and guidance through this. And it will be an awesome workshop. So stay tuned.
All right, so I'm excited to be here and be able to, if you could go back to the other slide, the first slide, yep, I appreciate that. So I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to help, and we're happy to record this, and hopefully we find something useful. So I'm gonna ask the team here. The first thing is what is the difference between a cover letter and essay prompts? So anybody, what is the difference?
I'll shoot my shot. I think a cover letter would basically be what you want to tell the person that's hiring you, whether it's a job, whether it's a research, a little bit more outside of what the CV entailed. And maybe why you're interested in that specific position that you're applying, while an essay prompt would basically be what the job or the research opportunity is asking you to write about. So you really have to focus on what their mission is and how you can tailor your experiences and your story into that mission and that essay prompt.
Dominic, our guest, would you agree or add on to anything about a cover letter essay prompt?
I mean, that makes sense to me. That's what I thought it was too.
So one thing that's tough about cover letters, because there's no prompt, it is a taught skill of trying to apply to something. So as you write a letter, depending what the circumstances are, you want to tell a story in which adds to your CV. So things that may be interpreted, or you want to give context or lift out. What you don't want to do is redo your CV and start listing things that are there. So you want to tailor it to the focus of what you're applying to, and understand both your strengths and weaknesses. So if there's something where you feel like, gosh, this is a reach for me, you want to write in the letter why you are a good fit for that. So if you already have the great strengths, lifting those out. Essay prompts are specific to what they want. So make sure you read the questions carefully and answer the question. What sometimes people do is they recycle things. So there's a prompt, they put it in, it doesn't match exactly what they're looking for. So when you see essay prompts, it's wherever you're applying to wants specific answers. So you have to understand the intent of that. So that's making sure that you understand the difference between cover letters and essay prompts. And I have some summaries on the next slide if you want to jump ahead of what that looks like. So it's really this opportunity for a perfect fit. Oftentimes when I apply for jobs, like many of you, I get imposter syndrome. I said, I don't even know if I can qualify for this. Now, one of the toughest things about applying for jobs is you have to self-promote yourself. And that can be hard for different people. And sometimes when they write things, it's like, oh, I was in a group, I was hired for this, but it doesn't tell me what you did in that role. So you really have to center yourself and say, this is what I have done, and you have to self-promote. It can be hard for lots of people. Sometimes culturally, it's not good to be sort of forthright. You want to be more modest, but in cover letters, you really have to do that. And if you think there's a gap, you need to address it and say, say maybe there's a gap, or we're at a school that doesn't have a home department. You want to sort of talk about it, because it's going to be obvious that you may not have the same opportunities as other places. And this is why you're applying to that position. So they may not understand that. And if they look at your CV, oh, it's curious, you don't have these other opportunities. Well, because we don't have our own hospital, it's a little bit harder to get. So helping them explain that. If you just say what a community-based medical school is, they may not understand that. And it's really important to highlight your areas of strength that align with the opportunity, depending on what it is. You can also explain how to project. This opportunity would really allow me to achieve my career goals. So where you want to go, how is it helping you get there? Essay prompts. I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure you read the prompt and understand what it's asking. Sometimes even the essay prompts can be confusing. I know sometimes on the AMCAS application, it used to ask like, did COVID affect you? And sometimes it's just a technical question about what it is, but it's an opportunity to say how it might affect your grades. It's really trying to understand the context where your application may be different in a medical school application because of COVID that the committee might not understand. So it's really being able to explain it. It's not just an opportunity to talk about life. It's really there to help understand how your application may be affected and help them evaluate you equally to somebody else, okay? So really understanding the essence of those prompts. So any question with the group right now between cover letters and prompts?
No.
All right, Joanna is going to be our example for our
Sorry,
next
I
case.
have a question.
Yeah, Dominic.
For the cover letters, is there usually like a length that's preferred, or does the length not matter as much?
Almost always answer it depends on what you're applying to. The key is to be concise. You definitely don't want a 3-page.
Okay,
If you can fit it on a 1-page, I think it's better just from a reading, but it can be longer. The key is to be clear what you're trying to communicate. When I went off to I've written cover letters now, my cover letters are about 3 pages, but they're usually for high level positions. So you're writing, I mean, they're expecting a big investment in you. So you have to almost like present, and you've probably seen when people have been hired at the School of Medicine, they have to do a whole presentation. So the level in which you're applying to can matter. You also have to look at the number of applications. So Joanna, if you're applying for a position that has 10,000 applications for 5 spots, the length of the letter is going to matter because look how many they have to look through. Versus if you have a search firm, like when I was hired, their scope, they're going to read everything because they're looking for the candidate. So you can be longer for what it is. So it's understanding the context and what that is. Earlier in your career, I would probably suggest being shorter. But Dominic, when I read it, sometimes I read people's cover letter, it doesn't help me understand anything more than what's on the CV or the resume. So helping be, oh, why are you applying this position? A CV sometimes isn't obvious in that, so it's your opportunity to say that. And if you've had a unique journey, so say, for medical students, say you've taken some time off and you've done some life things, and this is almost like a second career. That's going to be obvious when you're writing, then when they see it, but you need to explain it. So that's a great place in the color. So that might be a little bit longer because you need to explain that journey. Or you're in a field, maybe your whole life you wanted to go into psychiatry, and all of a sudden you fell in love with surgery. And so a lot of your resume has psychiatry things in it, and you're just beginning your surgery exploration. So explaining that, where that might be. So those are things that are being obvious, and that may take a little bit longer to do. But if you always want to do surgery, you have a path of surgery, you're applying to a surgery for research, I think you could really just talk about how it fits into your career goals. But it's all contextual. There's not a perfect template, and that's what makes it a little bit more difficult.
Dean Danny, I have a follow-up question. Because I also had a question on the length of the cover letter that Dominique just asked about. So like if we just kind of pull it together of like a resume, a CV, and a cover letter. So a resume approximately should it be 1 page? I mean, there's not like it should all be like catered to depending on the position, but like as like a standard, like a resume around like 1 page, CV kind of like 2 to 3, and then like cover letter maximum 3 pages, or like could we could you clarify on like the number of pages for depending on the style they want us to get to?
So I'll give you, I know you want kind of a hard number, being precise and concise. That's the number one thing. Being able to do that and being strategic in what you're saying. The length can matter because of the person reading it. So a resume is typically shorter because you're applying for a job and they scan it. Sometimes they need to be one page. You want to lift things out. Certainly not more than 2 pages for a resume. A CV can be 150 pages. It's designed to be long. It's designed to capture. Now, your careers are mostly just beginning, but the length doesn't matter unless they specify. Sometimes they will say you need a 2-page CV. That means they're asking you to highlight things that are relevant. But most of the time for academic things, CVs are long because it's your entire academic journey. Now, most of the time your journey is just beginning, particularly from undergrad and then into professional schooling. And then what does that look like beyond that? And as you get farther along, some of that stuff will drop off. Things from high school, from undergrad. I still have, I think I used to have on my CV for the longest time. I'm very proud of this. That was a softball champion. That was probably like 35 years ago. I'm still very proud of that. So I'd never take it off. So again, it tells this story of what you're proud about as you go. So I can't give you an exact number. Resume is typically shorter. Your cover letter needs to be intentional. If you need more space to write it, I think that's okay. I wouldn't do a resume or a cover letter more than 2 pages. But I will say in a cover letter, your first paragraph really matters.
Okay.
And we'll see that in your example, I believe, Joanna, what that looks like. But
Yeah.
I think shorter in your type, particularly if you have 10,000 applications and they're applying for 5 spots, shorter is going to be likely better because they're going to scan it.
Okay.
And that's why formatting, particularly your CV, matters. If you look at different CVs, some are, you can read them really quick just from the formatting. Right. So if you have an email that is all text versus bullets, like if we put this all without bullets, it's just harder to read.
Right.
And so just think about the reader. And I think that's what a lot of people lose is that you got to keep in mind the reader. And I'll tease you all a little bit. The readers are going to probably be more my age than your age. So understanding from my perspective what that looks like, and I didn't really appreciate this when I was younger, but the font size does matter. Now that we have electronic, you can sort of zoom in, it's not as a big a deal. But we also know when people do that, they're kind of playing around with the format piece rather than the content of it. But things like if you use, I was reading somebody else's CD, they say, well, I'm an ultrasound instructor. Somebody outside of UCR School of Medicine doesn't understand what that means. So you have to explain it. So just make sure the reader outside, so if you gave it to your parent or an uncle, aunt, could they understand what you're saying without the context of being at UCR School of Medicine?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Let's pull up this example, speaking of length and first paragraph.
Oh, yes. I will do so. So for my cover letter, I just had it and then, oh yes, here we go. So I'm gonna show you, I will show the before I met Dean Danny and then after I met Dean Danny, how it changed. So let me share that right here. So I did it, oh, why is it not sharing? Let me try it one more time. It should work. It worked earlier. Resume share. Why is it not?
It's trying, huh? I have your email. I think I could probably pull it up too. It keeps flickering.
Yeah. Oh no. Let me try. Let me try removing. Let me try again. And then, sorry about that.
John, I can also share. I have your email with the
Oh.
document if you would like.
Yeah, I have. I can. Let me try one more time. Let's see. Can we see? Oh, okay. It says, oh no, never mind. Yes?
Yeah, we
No?
can see.
Okay, please. I try to remove my tabs and then, oh, perfect.
There
Oh
it is.
no. Okay, so this is a before. So I did it as of like a generic one for applying for a research position for oh, I think it was supposedly Loma Linda, which I made up. So please, for the before that was made up, and then after I made it more tailored. So bear with me in that. And so
Joanna, let me pause here for a second. So Dominic, when you read the first paragraph of Joanna's cover letter. What do you learn from her? The first paragraph. And would you continue reading?
I'm learning that her name is Joanna and she wants to apply for the position. And she's a medical student. And would I
So,
continue? Yeah, I would continue, but
but does it tell anything new?
no.
Okay. And if you have 1,000 of these, right, you want that first paragraph to be really, really strong. So I'm going to ask Camilla. So I think this is a generation that I see a lot of students write what Joanna says. Would you agree?
I think we do that a lot. I think I did similar thing, where we're just like repeating information that may not necessarily be important. And I think we tend to forget that they're on a limited time and they're probably reading 1,000 of these applications. Yeah, I personally did the same thing. So I agree. Yeah, we just repeated information that was unnecessary to be repeated.
Now, this is my guess is what you're all doing is I think as you go through the professional career, like anything else, it's a skill. So the more you do it, the better you get.
Mhm.
What I think you all are doing is replicating an email.
Mhm.
And an email becomes very informal. So I see this a lot in an email where they say, this is my name to give me introduction and different things like that, right? So that's where you have to transition between a professional cover letter versus an informal communication.
Mhm.
And so that's when Joanna and I talked, as you take that first paragraph to understand who you are, but not necessarily your name, because I have her name at the top. I also have a resume. So I've seen her name several times, right? There's not a need to write that. And if it's for first-year medical students, they know you're probably first-year medical, unless I'd ask specifically to say, to confirm that. Usually they have the medical school write a letter that's confirmed enrollment or something like that. So just know the components of the application in which you really may not need to do that. They're applying for the research position. To me, that's a little bit obvious because it's, why else would you be writing this? So in this, I've learned her name, which I already knew. I already knew she's a medical student, and I already know she's applying to research. So as you think about that first paragraph, how to strategize that. So Joanna and I talked about that. All right, do you want to talk a little bit about that second paragraph?
Yeah, so in the second paragraph, I was talking about I kind of wanted to build a story of like my background before like telling why I wanted to apply to that position. So I kind of reiterated pretty much what was in the CV, but in a very condensed format. But Dean Danny and I talked and we were he was telling me that it didn't really have a like there was no new information he was getting from like this cover letter from the CV and like what role it was playing in like making me helping like the reader understand like how am I a good fit, because this is pretty much like useless information for the reader. It's like it's the same thing. Like all medical students worked at a free clinic. They did had healthcare. So what? So that in that aspect, I think we discussed on how we can make it more tailored of my personality and of my own needs and what I could contribute.
And I think Joanna's being a little hard on herself. I think the idea here is to be how are you unique and going to fit this position? So when you do things that are generic, it blends in with everybody else, because if we surveyed the students who applied for a position, how many of them done a free clinic?
A lot of them probably.
But lifting out, maybe, that the reason you do the free clinic or lift out, depending what the research position is, that you've identified a gap and you've taken on to address an issue. And here's what you've done to address that through that piece, which may not come out on the CV. So it's okay that you have these experiences, but lifting out how you want to be able to stand out in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Examples. I think you hear me say this over and over again. Don't tell me, show me like examples, what you've done, problem solve, you've been innovative, You've gone above and beyond to address something as a, the research chair of the San Bernardino clinic and so forth.
Yes.
Once you talk about the third paragraph.
Yes, so for the third paragraph, this we discussed should be more at the front and in the beginning of the introduction, because this actually kind of went more in detail of what I did and like what my interests were and how I wanted to pursue a similar research in that area. And so we discussed that this actually should be up here in the first paragraph and be more condensed in the fact, and also being able to really hone in the aspects of what are my skill sets. And so that was kind of like the third paragraph, because by this point, the reader is like first, second, okay. If they have like 10,000 applicants, like Danny said, it will be like, next, it's not new information and they wouldn't see this critical aspect of my application until later or not even read it. And so it would be much better just to delete this first paragraph of my name, since they already know who I am, and just begin with a strong first introduction of this is who I am and this is what I can offer. And this is some of the things that I want to do, but there are other also aspects that I want to grow in. And so really highlighting those aspects were key in really making my cover letter a strong application.
The only thing I would add, I think, remember the reader. If you're making me work harder to figure things out, that's not good for you. Because I'm now searching and trying to understand where you're going to pick somebody. Packaging is half the battle. The better you package it, make it easier. If they're like, oh, I see they're applying. This is their background. This look like a really good fit for us. And then maybe they do an interview or they look more deeper at. So you don't want to make it hard for the reader to understand how you are one of a good qualities for this particular position. Because like anything, if I gave you something harder to find and you found something easier to read, which one are you likely to choose as a human? Something that's easier to read. And that's where that first gen, having workshops, it's a skill to write letters. So be practicing and be able to do that. So I'm happy to read anybody's cover letter and go through them and try to improve them and give you feedback, because it is something you have to learn over time.
Yes. And then just the last paragraph, I just did a concluding one. This one was kind of a summary of kind of really giving that like whole letter of intent almost of this is what I want to do, this is what I wanted to pursue. I don't think we discussed specifically on the last paragraph, but I think in a way that I could, and I think I kind of honed it a little bit of just really being able to be more specific rather than being more generic. It feels very, it's not as, like, I want to make the concluding one also a strong impression for the reader. That way they leave reading that like, oh, I want to see this candidate or I want to work with this person, rather than, oh, it was just a nice concluding remark.
Awesome. Let's go to the more improved version.
Yes, a more improved version, but also it will, I feel my cover letter continuously needs, there's more work.
But Joanna, as you have a new outcome, how does it read? How do you feel like it? You feel like it reads better to you?
Yes, it feels a lot better. And also, I felt like I gained more confidence in myself with regards to that.
Nice.
Especially the introduction. I can do like a before and after, like simultaneously, but this is my after. Oh, why is it doing this again? Great. Oh no, why is it not?
It's making you work.
I know. It's making me okay, no. Okay. I'm sorry. Kimia, could you share this
Yeah,
link?
of course. Let me just open it up. I found it right here.
One of your skill sets is adjusting on the fly, correct, Joanna?
Yes, being adaptable.
We'll add
Yes,
that to your
I
resume.
have it up too. Let me see if oh, you got it?
Got it,
Yeah.
yes. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So then this is
Well, I'm gonna pick on Dominic again a little bit. Dominic, now read the first paragraph and see how what you think about it now from the first one.
Right away, I noticed that she didn't like reintroduce herself again, so that's good. She gets right into what makes her, like she immediately says, I'm a strong applicant with a background, so she gets right into what she wants to talk about. To me, it seems better.
If you had to pick between the two letters, which one would you sort of pick to continue reading based on, even though it's the same person, but when would you pick if you just had to compare them?
Definitely the new one.
So, and I like the confidence. I even the word, I am a strong applicant, right? It comes through with that piece. And then you're giving me why you're a strong applicant, the two fields of research. I remember, Jonah, when we talked about this, you're like, I'm not sure, I don't know if I've had enough research. And so to talk about that, and that's what the first one felt like, I'm not sure about this. This one feels like, okay, I deserve this position. I'm going to show you that I need to be chosen or at least looked at here. So walk me through that process, Joanna, because this wasn't easy. Like all of a sudden you have to find how to articulate your strengths, but it's sometimes not very easy to self-advocate for yourself.
Yes, it was, I felt like I was a new person. I was like, I felt like a different person writing this. So, and then Dean Danny really gave me a lot of good tips on, and I just kind of like worked on that, and so it made me a much strong introduction. So I based on the discussion we had, I really kind of highlighted my different backgrounds with research, telling them in the very beginning, this is my interest, but this is also what I did prior, and really being able to hone in on what aspects did I study and what techniques did I really master and really learn and have that in skill set. And so I really was able to condense that information and also kind of tie it all back together of like, this is why from my background and my interest, I'm a good fit, telling the reader I'm a good fit, but also this is also why I want to pursue this type of externship, this type of research that's offered at UCR research. So that was kind of like the thought process we went through together of what different aspects do I have and how can I kind of bring it all together to tie it back to this research that I really want to pursue.
And Camille, now when you read it, she sounds like a researcher, doesn't she?
She definitely does.
And that's the point. You're talking like a researcher. You're talking about techniques. You're talking about the background. And even as you look in the second paragraph, highlight what you sort of approach there. Same first sentence you had before, but you change it a little bit.
Yes, I really, since given that it was more research oriented, and I took away the aspects with regards to free clinic and um with the scribe, since it didn't really it didn't contribute too much into the story I wanted to play in this specific cover letter. So I really discussed more in depth about diabetes and how I want to pursue with Trinetics, what I want, like the research with regards to like writing the process, with regards to with graphs analysis, which Trinetics is the bulk of, like that's what the majority role I would be playing. And so really showing my skill sets of I have this type of background and specifying like the number of participants and what I did to really help them readers show, okay, yeah, she seems to have a good understanding, and I want to be able to kind of at least meet with her or work with her in this project.
And what about your last paragraph there?
Yes, so in this last one, I made it more specific. I tried to make it, I took away all the fluffers and that. And so this project that you guys are doing, this hypoglycemia with end stage, this is what I want to do. And this is what I want to pursue. I think it could be done still a little bit better with regards to like, I don't like high school and like, but I felt like at least I gave that more like specificity in the very last one and being able to, I know what you are doing more. Like I've been reading up on it, or I've been studying it rather than more generalized. And so I felt like it was overall a much stronger and much improved version of my before, and also in an aspect where it highlighted my skill sets where it didn't too much in the other letter, and I was able to really portray myself in a stronger light.
And it's shorter.
Yeah, which is
So,
better.
if you had to pick one area of improvement, give me in this particular cover letter for Joel, would you find anything area of improvement at all? What you would ask her to advance? I think overall it's great, but you see any area of improvement?
Overall, I want to say good job. It looks amazing, like compared to what we had initially. I think you've done a great job portraying this. And I really want to talk to you about your intermittent fasting research that you mentioned in the first paragraph. Like, let's please talk about it. It interests me so much. Um, if I was to be very like nitpicky about it, I would wanna like you actually mentioned it, so that's why I want to bring it up too. Your last paragraph, you mentioned the endocrinology has always interested me since high school. Again, it's a little bit generic. Like, why does it interest you since high school? Is it because you lived in Inland Empire and you had the exposure, like working with diabetic patients who didn't have access to like insulin or care? Like, why was it interested? Like, why was it interesting? I would expand on that a little bit more, make it a little bit more personal in that sense. And you don't have to include it in your concluding like paragraph. It could also be like added to your second paragraph, potentially saying, you did mention that you were growing up in Inland Empire. So maybe you could even like rewrite the sentence in a way that says, endocrine has interested me since high school, as seen in my involvement in the free clinic and the diabetes and the cardiovascular disease that I've seen, blah blah blah. You could have expanded on that, but overall, I think you did a great job.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that piece where what inspired you was it maybe you have a family member that went through that's very personal to you, or you see the disparity there. But I think overall really great. The only other area that I might lift out a little bit is your career aspirations, where that might be. If you're doing your careers, to look at the career in endocrinology, and this research will help you advance that piece. But overall, so much stronger than the first, much more clear. I think you even inspired the group here. Like, wow, I want to talk to this person about what background they have. And I remember, I talked to you like, well, I'm not a researcher, but we looked at your CV. Well, tell me about this. And then you start talking about, tell me about this. So I think it's having that pride in the stuff that you've done and packaging it in a way that articulates to the audience your strengths. And that can be very difficult to do sometimes. And I think it's very easy to say, well, I've done this, I've done that. That's a very common way to do it. But I want to emphasize to anybody, it's the iterative process. I think being open to getting the feedback, and I'm happy to look at letters and be that. And I thought Joanna was a really good learner. So like, give me more, help me understand. How do I improve? So I appreciate that willingness to hear and navigate, but also building our confidence that you have the research. We just got to pull it out of you to articulate.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because I think I was really struggling in that aspect of like I wasn't sure how to like package it, and it felt like having this that space to be able to really go through the details and like discuss it and being able to really expand upon that was very helpful for me. So
Good. Let's jump forward to an essay prompt. I know, Camilla, you're going to show a prompt, a beginning and after as well.
Yes, I'm just going to pause the screen real quick so I can pull it up.
And then I
And
have,
Dominic, while we're waiting, any questions so far about cover letters?
No, not at the moment. I think it all makes sense to me. So I guess the way I was writing them, and I think what I was messing up is I kind of wrote it like an essay. And I guess it's not much like an essay at all. Like you don't need like an intro or like I see that she put a conclusion remark, but it was more like I don't know how to explain it. Like it was not much of like a normal conclusion. It was like her still explaining why she's a good fit instead of just summarizing everything.
So I'm sorry. Can you see my screen? I apologize for
Mhm.
interrupting. Okay. Oh,
But for me, it's very small.
okay. Oops. Let me open with Microsoft Word and then that could, is that okay? I apologize. I just wanted to show the prompt before I get started with the actual personal statement that I wrote, and I'll go over the original first and then the one that I edited after talking to Dean Danny. So I applied to this ophthalmology program, research scholars program at Harvard, and they did have an essay prompt, which was describe your interest in ophthalmology and how our program would help you overcome barriers in your career goal. And just going over the program structure as well as what is expected off of the program and their eligibility criteria, they really focus on how important diversity is to them and how they want to expand that opportunity to the students who may not usually get the chance to have the exposure to ophthalmology research who do want to be ophthalmologists. So again, going to that, so I had the prompt of why I want to be ophthalmologist and why would the program help me. This was the original one I wrote. And I'm not gonna bore you with all of the details, so I'll kind of go holistically because it was like I think $1,000, 1,000 word limit, so it was a lot. But initially what I did with my first paragraph, which was the most important thing that I had to change, was that I really focused on why I wanted to do medicine. And I think that was the biggest mistake because now I'm already in medicine. I'm not convincing anyone of why I want to go into medical school anymore. It's more about, okay, my career goal now. So we've gotten to that step. I have to get to a point of saying that, okay, I've already made it here. So what is the next step? What have I done so far? And what are the next steps that I need to take in order to become an ophthalmologist? And also, just like Joanna mentioned, it was really important to catch the reader's attention at the get-go and not really be fluffing around with like, different words and just different stories that didn't really flow. So again, my first paragraph really focused on medicine rather than ophthalmology. And I really focused on different research that I did, which maybe for a cover letter would have been a good idea. But writing an essay prompt, which didn't ask me about my research experiences, but rather asked why I wanted to be an ophthalmologist, it didn't quite make sense. So we went ahead and removed all of this research experiences, which were kind of irrelevant. And the second part of the essay prompt, which was asking about how would this program help you overcome any adversities, I only focused with it for one paragraph, which was again, the second biggest part of the essay prompt. So it was kind of all over the place. It wasn't organized. I think it was just like bits and pieces of different essays I had written, different things that I thought made sense to be in the essay. If Dean Danny doesn't want to mention anything, I'll go show the actual edited one.
The only thing I would add, the thing you said at the very end, it is not uncommon to recycle essays. And that's okay to do. And I've done that for like, I wrote the most beautiful paragraph. I really like this paragraph. I'm going to use it here no matter what. And I think you have to, and sometimes that works. You can use a template. You have a little bit of a bio or the background. I'm sure Joanna is going to use paragraphs from that letter in other places. It's finding the right pieces. So as you begin building your portfolio of responses, keep them like the paragraphs, but always read them to massage them enough to fit the prompt. I think just keeping them, cut and pasting them. And when I met with you, it felt like she cut and paste all different sorts of essays together without making it a story. So it's okay to do that, but you got to make sure, okay, does this really connect? And I think in the meeting, I kept asking him, how does this relate to the prompt? I think I kept asking you.
Yeah.
So often the technique is to put that prompt at the top of the paper, put it on the side. How am I answering this question? So sometimes we run astray. Oh, I love this paragraph. And then did I answer the question? And so keeping that in mind, and I think when you wrote the next time, I'm sure you heard my voice. Am I answering the question? Am I answering the question? So always keep that in mind with the prompt.
Yeah, so definitely. I think what I did while I was editing this, I basically every paragraph, because I remember you mentioned give me one word of how this is answering the prompt, and I couldn't with any of my paragraphs. So that was kind of my goal. I was like, maybe 2 words. But after I write a paragraph, I try to like, come up with a summary of did it answer the first or the second prompt at least. And also I know you mentioned tell me why you want to do this, and then tell me again, and then tell me about it again, and then tell me about it again. So I think we forget that when people are scheming through essays, how easy it is for them to forget what we've already mentioned because they're not really spending that much time reading these essays. So it's really important to highlight the biggest factors that you want them to take away from it. So again, I apologize, I'm gonna pause this real quick. Okay, can you see the new page?
Yep.
Okay, beautiful. So just looking at the first paragraph, so again, I completely shifted away from medicine to career goal. And I added, and I guess I kind of had to do a little bit of opening up and like vulnerability session with Dean Danny and be like, why do I even want to do this in the first place? It's really important to be genuine. I think it really reflects when they're reading your paper rather than just being like very generic and saying, I want to be ophthalmologist because I don't know, I like the field, I had exposure to the field, but rather making it personal because I'm sure all of us have that personal story. It's the reason why we're here, and I'm sure it's a reason why we want to pursue that career. It's just about digging it up and kind of relating it. So again, I talked about my grandma and how that was like the turning point for me of wanting to pursue like, eye care in the future. And again, all the research experiences were removed and I kept repeating it. So the second part was the important part of why do I want to apply to this event externship, which is not in my school. And again, it was my weakness that my school is a community-based school where I don't have a home-based ophthalmology program. But I didn't want to seem like I chose a school that I wasn't even interested in, but rather make it into a strength. So, I get exposure to, all these different, I get hands-on exposure to like patient care from early on. But just because I don't have that support in ophthalmology, I want to come explore it at your school so I can bring it back to my community. So I think it was really important to be able to like turn and twist it in that sense that why it was important to get that hands-on experience and bring it back to the Inland Empire. So I really highlighted that healthcare disparity and the reason why I chose this school in the first place, and how this specific program can help me overcome this disparity that I face like at my school. So again, yeah, I think that was basically what I really tried to portray, and I kept telling it again. It's a lot shorter as you can see. Oh, actually, maybe not. Not as short. I really try to go with that 1,000 word limit. Um, but research were removed because I figured that the CV itself that I had written and we went over in the previous workshop really portrayed my experiences in terms of research. So I focused a little bit more on my actual ophthalmology experiences, such as saying, I did the volunteer at the free clinics and how that, again, that further enhanced my interest in ophthalmology. And
And then
then,
Camilla, just as I interrupt,
mhm,
what I heard you say, every paragraph is now intentional. You're trying to make a point specific to the prompt where you couldn't do that before. So each paragraph, I felt like even if you just cut out that paragraph, it's about the prompt. You could read them independently of each other, even though it tells a story. Each one, you're trying to be very specific on advancing why you should be chosen for this.
Yes, exactly. Like I mentioned, I like read the paragraph. It should answer at least one of those prompt questions. If it didn't, as hard as it was, I had to kind of delete it out and write something new. Um, so I guess that is basically it. But again, with my concluding paragraph, I really wanted, just like Joanna said, I think it was good to start with something strong and end with something strong. So I really tried to like summarize everything I mentioned in this final paragraph by, again, bringing up the fact that my school is a community hospital, a community school, and then I lack that, and I really want to get that experience. And this program would again help me overcome that disparity that I face here and what I want to do in the future. So this research program will give me the opportunities and the connections that I need to do whatever I want to do in the future. And I kind of brought it back. And I did this because think Danny just came up with this pun intended sentence, and I can't find it, but I really liked it because I was like, oh, this is definitely, it's gonna make them smile, hopefully. I think it was by becoming, oh, so the commitment is deeply rooted in my desire to honor my grandmother's legacy by becoming a physician she would want to see. And that because my grandmother lost her eyesight due to diabetes retinopathy. So I really tried to like kind of bring it all together so it made sense for them and they really felt like they were reading a story in a sense.
My question to both of you, did you know you're both interested in diabetes research or connected? Did you know that before this session?
No, I did not.
Dominic, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. If you had to have some takeaways from today, what would you have some takeaways both from a cover letter and these essay prompts?
Let me see. Be precise and concise. Try to not make it generic so you don't blend in with all the other applicants. Get right into what you want to say right away in the cover letter and in the essay, just so, when they read it, they won't forget about you right away. What else? When you're writing, don't make the reader search too hard or like go out of their way to find out what you're trying to say.
Mhm.
Those are the main points that I wrote down.
Those are great. Those are great. I think we have a summary slide to kind of wrap things up. And then if after people have questions about the workshop, happy to answer questions by email. And so something I have to do, I have to tell people, I call it the 180-degree rule. This means you pick a topic and you fully develop it. Some people put like 4 different topics. I think, Camille, when we read yours, you're like incorporating all these different ideas in a single paragraph, and it's just hard to follow. So how do you pick one and really develop it? And I think what comes through in yours, you start with your grandmother, where that inspiration goes, and you sort of fully develop that. And then you link it to the next stage, and you link it to the next stage rather than trying to do all in one paragraph.
Mhm.
Trying to avoid listing activities. I always say, show me, not tell me. You list things. Anybody can list things. I did this, I did that, but show me what you did. What impact did you have? How did it change the world or the environment that you're in? Emilia talked a lot about this. I call them guideposts. When we read, we naturally lose ourselves when reading. I don't know if you've ever been reading a novel or a book and you get lost. And so they often are very good authors provide these guideposts. Okay, I'm going to anchor you here. I'm going to anchor you again just to keep moving along. And so you can do a lot of framing. I'm going to introduce and then put another guidepost. I'm going to connect to the first part and put another guidepost, connect it again. So you're not losing the reader and building your story. Get to the point quickly. Each person has the way to write. I am not a good writer myself. I have to write a lot. Whittle down. And we saw well, particularly Joanna, she started larger and it got actually less words, but much tighter in terms of her content. So whatever your writing process is, learn what that is. Some people need outlines. Some people need, I think younger people say word vomit. I think, is that what people say? I think this is a brain something, but I think it's a brain fart, but maybe that's an
Great job.
older term. But anyway, a word vomit, get it all out there, and then you can start picking things apart. So learning techniques, how to write. I think I even asked you, highlight the sentence you're trying to cover.
Mhm.
And I remember a couple of times you're like, I'm not sure it's in there. And so learning techniques, how to catch yourself able to do that.
Mhm.
What do you want the reader to take away from your paragraph? I think there's a typo there. I think it should be, if it's difficult to articulate, and if there's more than one point, make sure it's clear to have and rewrite the paragraph. Sometimes I give it to somebody else. I'll give it to my wife. If you had to pick one thing out of that paragraph I'm trying to communicate, what is it? And if she can't answer the question, I'm probably not very clear what I'm trying to communicate. So don't be afraid to share it to somebody and get that honest feedback. And be honest and self-reflect on your weakness. If it's something you need to address in the cover letter, you need to address it. So if I see a weakness and you don't address it, then you're leaving up the narrative for me to make assumptions about you. Control your own narrative. And I like what Camilla did and said, let's talk about the community-based medical school. Even though we don't have an ophthalmology department, she gets the opportunity to work with different clinics, different populations, and she wants that intersection of ophthalmology in those populations. So all of a sudden, it's still a gap, but she's drawing on what she can get from that gap, and that the program is going to help her get that ophthalmology training. So just be clear what your self-reflection is. We almost did the opposite for Joanna. She saw all these strengths, but her first letter didn't really capture all the amazing things that she's done. So don't be shy in self-promoting. I know it can be difficult for some, but getting good at self-promoting yourself in writing and in person. If we walk down the elevator now, Joanna, I said, are you a researcher? I think after now writing that, you could talk about, hang with some of the best researchers. You could talk about techniques, show that excitement. The first one, maybe not so much. You're just like, I'm introducing myself and so forth. But so now that you have that language as a writer, I think you can also do it in person. So when you go to a conference, you can talk about, the research technique. And when they read the letter, you sound like a researcher now. The first one felt more like an email, like, hello, this is who I am. Please give me this job. Nice work, everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Dean
Yeah,
Danny.
thank
I
you so
appreciate
much,
all of your
Dean
help
Danny.
with these workshops.
I know.
And I truly hope we can host some more workshops so that all the students can get more feedbacks on their resumes and cover letters.
Yes.
I agree. And look
every
at that,
time.
right on time.
Perfect.
Yes. No, every
Right
time
on.
I learn so much. So thank you so much for all your insight, Dean Danny. I have a feeling you might be like full on schedule after all our workshops. All our
No,
students want to reserve appointments with you. So no, I
anytime.
gained.
Anytime.
Thank
And
you.
even if you all think if we want to host a lunch actually in person and do it in person and have food there,